Welcome back to True Story with John Gibson. Today's guest is a super special guest. He is a BJJ black belt, professor, ADC world champion, Robert Drysdale.
Thanks for having me, John.
Man, my pleasure. Thank you so much, Robert. Right out of the chute, I just want to first and foremost, again, congratulate you on being one of the few ADC world champions, especially American, Brazilian, both, right? But it's that time of year and people are starting to gear up and all these super matches are coming into place and stuff. So I would love to just start there and kind of pick your brain a little bit about maybe going back in time about your experience first and foremost, because you went through a trial by fire. I was rewatching a couple of your matches, the Marcelo Garcia match, of course, but even the way to the finals, man, that was no easy road. What was that journey like?
I remember well the morning for the Open. I didn't do as well in my division as I wished. I lost to Shanji by a takedown. I went for a guillotine, and I think he, like in ADCC, you can slam, right? So he held me up, which is the right thing to do, because if he had gone down, there's a better chance I would have finished him. So he stood and kept me up, and then he slammed me. And on the slam, there's a little quick, a split-second disconnect there. And with both of us being so slippery, he scored the 2. And for the rest of the match, I couldn't even come close to sweeping him. So I lost the semifinal. And then he went on to beat Braulio in the final. And then I won a third place match against Kakareku, he took second place the previous ADCC. He lost to Roger Gracie in the final, and he beat me. That was my second match at ADCC 2005. I lost to Kakareku, so I got him back in 2007 with a rear naked choke. He went for a leg lock. I transitioned to the back and took a rear naked choke. So it's funny, when I walked in that Open, I had no pressure on. Like, I wasn't happy that I took third, but I wasn't that upset either, because I feel like third place at ADCC is more than, it's not an insignificant accomplishment.
No. And you were so young.
Shanji, who was like, not a small player, and it was a close fight. And I beat Kakareku, who took second the previous ADCC and who had beaten me in that same 2005 ADCC. So there was I was not happy, but I didn't feel the pressure that I felt in my weight class, right? So I've always done better without pressure, because I put so much pressure on myself to win. I'm my own worst enemy. My enemies were always in my own head. I wanted to succeed so badly, I'd almost stop myself from doing better for fear of making any mistakes, right?
I understand.
So I walked into that Open. I walked in there, whatever happens, happens. I had a very clear mind. I was very happy, not feeling any pressure, very loose and relaxed, and sort of warmed up too, because I had fought my division that day. So something happens to your body where, your mind is anxious and your body's not warm. And it's very difficult for this right here to happen. This is what you want happening, right? You got that anxiety that's killing you, and you got a body that's not warm up, and you're competing. Like, you're completely out of sync. And I've always had a hard time getting those two in sync, mind and body. But when I had those two in sync, those were my best performances, when my mind and body were running together. It was, basketball players refer to being in the zone. You're just in the zone. You don't get tired. Everything goes according to plan. Your mind and your body are just doing what they want to do in perfect unison. And I don't know how to get to that stage, man. I wish there were little buttons, I wish there were a little switch that I could press somewhere, flip somewhere, and I get immediately into that stage, because I would like to live the rest of my life in that stage.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Beautiful place to be. It's really a magical place when you can be in that, in that zone. But I walked in the Open like a very open mind and very clear heart, and I'm like, let's see what happens, and I beat Big Mac, who is not such a known competitor these days, but he's beaten some really big names, ultra heavyweight, and I had fought him before in Brazil as a purple belt. I knew him personally, good guy. And then I beat David Avalon, who's a good friend of mine these days. I beat him in the quarterfinals, and then I beat Andre in the final and Marcelo in the final. But leading up to that final, it was just my confidence, that synchrony I'm telling you about, of confidence, not being anxious, not feeling any doubt, any fear, all that being out the window, your body being well warmed up, and your reflexes are there, and your conditioning. You get that second wind, And everything was there before that match. Like I could not, like it couldn't have been more perfect. And then I remember smiling before my final with Marcelo. My friends were asking me like, why are you smiling, man? Focus. And I, in my head, I remember while I was smiling, in my head, I already won.
Wow.
Like, preemptively celebrating because I was feeling so confident that I was like, there's no way. Maybe, look, if I fought Marcelo 100 times, maybe he'll beat me 99 out of 100. I don't know. But today, if I fight him 100 times, I'm winning all 100.
Wow.
Like, that's how I felt. Like he just wasn't going to beat me. And I walked in there with that confidence. It was like, there's nothing this guy can do to beat me today. And that was it, man. It was a good day. I don't think I was the best guy in the bracket, to be honest. I think there were people in that bracket that were better than me. But that day, I don't think that there was anyone that was more in synchrony with themselves than I was.
Oh, it was a beautiful performance, a beautiful day of performance. I got chills as you were describing that because I remember, back then it wasn't easy to access this information. You had to go to like message boards and stuff. It was not easy. But I remember trying my best to follow the play-by-play. And when you got the rear naked choke on Andre, it was like, what? And then you're going to meet Marcelo, and this is when he's in his run. This is when he was like untouchable to so many. And your victory, and again, all due respect, obviously to Marcelo Garcia, but was it arm in guillotine the finish? But it was so quick. It was pretty.
It was the second minute in the fight.
Yes.
Right in the beginning. It was, today they call it the Darce choke. I used to call it the Bravo choke because it was a gi choke originally, and I made some adaptations to make it into a no-gi choke, and I called it Bravo with a B. But everyone in the U.S. was calling it Darce at the time.
Yeah.
So I've never been one of those that like, I have to have my name on a move. I would have named it the Drysdale choke. I'll give it curiosity. That I'm not trying to like take credit from anyone.
Right, of course.
So, but in the spirit of the conversation, what people call the Mikey lock, I've been doing for 10, 15 years.
Yeah, right.
It's one of those things where like
what is old is new. Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I've been doing that for like, when I first saw 50-50, it's the first thing I went for. The immediate answer to the 50-50 when heel hooks were allowed was to do that. But like, it's just one of those things. Like, I never really cared about names. It's like, it is what it is. Like, I do see the point of like guys like Eddie Bravo, they'll name everything. I think there is a good argument there. Especially for teaching, it does make it easier. I guess
to make a system, right?
Yeah, no, it does make sense. I'm not a very creative person in that regard. Every time I come up with a stupid name, it's just like an awful name for the move. I'm like, you know what? Let's just call it name.
Yeah.
And then, or it's something where like I feel uncomfortable naming it after myself. I've tried to do that a couple
I get it.
times. But always in the back of my mind, I'm like, you phony.
Yeah. No, it would feel weird. Yeah.
It feels so phony to me, like to try to like name a move after yourself. Like, if someone does it, I think that's honorable. Your students name a tournament after you. They name a move after your friends do that. I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
But if you do it yourself, there's something so cool about it.
It's like picking your own nickname. You can't do it.
It's just, I can't do it, man. Like, I've tried it. I'm like, man, that's so not me. Just stop.
I get it. Well, if anyone could, though, you probably actually could get away with it. You should give yourself more credit. But, that's a quick insight to your brain a little bit. That's really neat. And it kind of gives me a good transition here. But I do want to say, like, very much on the record, like, as a BJJ practitioner and someone who loves it, it's one of the many people I can say totally changed my life and all that. I think you personally, we owe you a lot of gratitude, man. Like, for one, you've been giving away a ton of teaching content for free for years, many, many years, which thank you, for anybody to go and hit Google and find that. That's very important. But moreover, your book and subsequent documentary, The Closed Guard, I just feel like personally, again, as in my humble opinion, as a practitioner of this sport, and I love so much, there's so much disinformation. I didn't have the clue about my own sport, like a thing I've tattooed on my body and the genesis of it and stuff. And what I thought I knew kind of like wasn't really right. And I appreciate you really being a historian for us and doing a lot of this research and stuff. So I guess what the question is what made you embark on this? Because it made you, I feel like, unfortunately, enemies. And it's so unfair. It's so unfair because you're telling the truth and giving us information. So I guess what made you brave enough to do it? And what spawned the idea?
It's funny. After I started getting bombarded by an army of haters, One sent me a quote from, I don't know, I haven't fact checked the quote, but it may be apocryphal, but I think it's a good quote. But it's supposedly from Plato, and it goes, "No one is hated as much as those who tell the truth."
Mm-hmm.
You know,
yeah, sure.
I'm not saying I am the beacon of truth and honesty in the world. I'm far from it. I'm very flawed, but I mean, in terms of the history of jiu-jitsu, I did my best.
Right.
And there's some, what's funny, this is my favorite part about, I mean, if criticism were coming from people who read the book critically and honestly themselves, I would have been perfectly willing to, acknowledge, redact, like I don't have a dog in this fight. I'm not a Gracie. I'm not an anti-Gracie. I'm not an observer. I don't have anything to gain from this, from one take or the other. Like if George Gracie was the real deal, how does that change my life? It's not like I inherited it. I mean, I'm not affiliated to him or his family. Right. Incidentally, his son, who actually doesn't even train jiu-jitsu, wrote me the other day thanking me for reviving the memory of his father. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty validating.
Good, but the interesting thing is that the criticism almost invariably, like to my knowledge, like 100% of it really came from people who either didn't read the book. That was the vast majority. People who did not read the book and drew assumptions based off of something they read online, or I don't like this guy, therefore everything he says is. I had a guy that went on a rant on Instagram against me. It was like an essay, and he was just tearing me apart. Like, you're just this piece of crap. How dare you? He's like kind of thinking that I'm making a defense of American Jiu-Jitsu against Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And it was starting to become clear to me that he hadn't read the book. Because he said something, why didn't you interview João Alberto Barreto? And I'm going, wait a second, we did interview him. Why didn't you interview Robson Gracie? I'm like, we interviewed him too. And he's like, why didn't you interview so-and-so? And I'm like, we interviewed that guy. He's like, wait a second, this guy didn't read the book. Right. So I messaged him, did you read the book? And he goes, no, I didn't, and I'm not going to read it because it's a piece of crap and you're a piece of shit. And then I looked at this guy. I'm thinking it's a troll, right? No, it's a guy in Brazil. He's like my age, maybe a little bit older. He's a black belt, 4th, 5th degree black belt, owns a school in Brazil, has kids, has a bunch of students, like a normal jiu-jitsu black.
Right.
And it's like, this guy's not a troll. Like, he's a guy with like, and I'm like thinking to myself, like how the audacity that you would criticize something you didn't read.
Right.
And then I had Fabio Gurgel pretty much. I mean, he goes and he thinks he's picking my book apart, and the whole time he's using arguments that I make in the book against the book. I'm like, dude, you either didn't read the book or you don't know how to read. Like, the things you're saying are in the book. I made that point myself, and then or like he's drawing assumption. Like, what did he say? He said something at some point that I didn't prove my thesis that Carlos never met Maeda. And I'm like, first of all, where did you get that from? Like, people draw these assumptions, they erect these straw mans, and then they go and beat them up, and then in a fight, I'm like, I never made that point, right? And why I'm not defending that position. Where did you get that from? So those were the criticisms. The only listen to this. So the valid criticism I got, that I was like there's 2 pieces of criticism that I plan on correcting in the second edition of the book. The first one came from Roberto Pedreira, who's a guy who's helped me a lot in the research of the book. And in fact, his books worked sort of as inspiration. And he felt the book was very, very Carlos and heliocentric. And I'm like, looking back, and I'm like, I think he's right. I think they were overly Carlos, because we've had that, I guess. Yeah,
maybe we acknowledged it too much. Maybe you, but
like the world has, But I had that so ingrained in my head. I think that now, like, as the dust settles down, I can see clearly, and I feel that, and not. I think Carlos's role has been more one of marketing and being a phenomenal manager, and Helio was more his personality, which was a very strong one, bordering on egomania. And I don't mean this in a bad way. It was necessary for jiu-jitsu to have a guy like that. But that personality that kept jiu-jitsu cohesive, in terms of fighting, of development, of putting your name out there, I mean, I think Carlson was a man, So everyone calls me an anti-Gracie. I think Carlson was the most undervalued guy in this whole story. The other guy that was very undervalued that I plan on correcting was Gio Omori. I think Gio Omori is a far more important character for jiu-jitsu in Brazil than Maeda, because Maeda is like blown out of proportion character.
Interesting.
What did Maeda actually do? And I asked people that they just stare at me, like, what did he actually
Who did he?
He didn't fight. Like, he was like, he's got some fake matches in Brazil. Like, he was a very experienced guy, but when he gets to Brazil, he's practically retired. Maeda's role is to teach a Brazilian called Jacinto Ferro, who in his turn taught Carlos Gracie.
Yeah, right, correct. There was a generation there, supposedly, in between them. And that's where the mystery was, did they ever actually train together? Was there just a claimed lineage? Yeah, correct.
And then the other piece of criticism that was very valid was very recent. This happened like 3 weeks ago. Raleigh Gracie, actually it was a couple of months ago, Raleigh Gracie calls me out of the blue and says, I heard you have a book out. Can you send me a copy? I'm like, sure. Because I sent some copies to some other members of the family. I think they didn't read it. But Raleigh actually called me, like, can I get a copy? I'm like, of course. So I mail him a copy. Comes back to me a month or two later, and he goes, I read your book. I thought it was very good. I thought you were very fair. You were very unbiased, except for one thing. And I go, and I'm listening. I'm like, okay. He goes, you were very unfair with my father. And I go, shit, man, you're right. Because when Raleigh said that, I had just finished reading. I mean, I had read it before, but like I started to change my mind on Rorion and how important he actually is. After I read an autobiography called Worth Defending, I think it's called, by Richard Bresler and Scott Burt, who's like happens to be the editor of Open and Closed Guard. And it's basically the story of how jiu-jitsu started in the United States, and like how Rorion was going into Walmart parking lots early in the 80s, handing out flyers. Now imagine if you're in the early 80s and you think Bruce Lee is the greatest thing since cheesecake, right?
Right.
And you're a Brazilian, tanned Brazilian, and you're handing out flyers at Walmart saying, look, we're going to put on this gi and you're going to come to my garage and we're going to roll around, and that's real fighting.
Right.
That's the most impossible sales pitch in the 1980s.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
And Rorion stuck. He was cleaning bathrooms, so right. And I looking back and like, when the hustle that guy went through, the process of breaking through the American knucklehead martial art mind,
for sure.
Like this is real fighting, creating the UFC, because he invented the UFC, not
right. Yeah. Didn't he become subsequently like an attorney as well, or something? Like
he was an attorney in Brazil.
Yeah, he got very educated.
He's an educated guy, and I mean the ambition and the vision.
Yes. Yeah.
It's astounding when you think about it. And I think because of his personality, he wanted that credit so bad. And he kind of ostracized himself, including from his own family. And that's the side of Rorion that people don't like. But at the end of the day, man, if it weren't for him, we wouldn't be here, right?
He's very important. You know what? You make such a good point, because we're so quick to go like Hickson or even Hoist Gracie for UFC. But without him, what UFC is there? Right?
Dana White would not have a job without him.
Yeah.
We've never heard of Vale Tudo. We call it MMA. It's not MMA.
Right.
It's Vale Tudo. I mean,
Vale Tudo, right?
Vale Tudo. That's the real name. To this day, I'm like, why did they change the name? You know?
Yeah. Subsequent rule changes, maybe. I don't know, or maybe it just sound too foreign. Yeah.
I think you had to Americanize it for sales purposes, right? Like, which I don't like. I'll be honest with you. I think it's almost a way of paying homage to people that came before.
I agree.
There was an effort there, people who were sacrificing their health and well-being and money to make nothing, really doing it for the passion of it, right? In the 1930s and 40s, when there was not much to gain.
Oh my gosh, no, yeah. Into the 90s and early 2000s. Even your generation, man, it's so unfortunate because, I love this sport, but I look at all the guys, and look at Gordon Ryan, who's arguably the greatest, let's say, American grappler right now, contemporary. He can be rich in this sport, and good for him. That's great. But it's so sad that just like your generation, you guys unfortunately just missed it. Or you really had to be enterprising. You had to really develop a good teaching prowess or market yourself. I mean, it took it took an entrepreneur to make it happen. And you're one of the people that's subsequent, obviously made that happen for yourself, but it wasn't easy. Like there was very few opportunities.
Well, the difference was if you wanted to learn a move, you had to really focus on what your opponents were doing, because no one had camcorders.
Yeah.
So you had to try to figure it out at the gym what that guy was doing. It was an exercise, and you would think, oh, that's worse. And that's actually better, because it forced you to think, right? It's the difference. Yeah. We're part of a generation that wants everything easy. Everything has to be quick, sugar. I call it the sugar generation. Like easy. Like everything's got to be quick and easily digestible. There was a pleasure there in discovery. There was a reward there, and because it was harder and it was slower too, but there was a reward there that I think that a lot of the young generations missed out on, because now they're overwhelmed with all these moves and they can't do any of them.
It's so true.
Like before, it's like there was like one new move, two new moves, and you're hyper focused on what they were doing, and like you actually got something out of it because you actually value that information. But now we don't value information anymore because there's so much of it. So it's like in one ear, out the other. And the other thing is regarding like the fact that these guys can make more money than my generation did. That doesn't bother me at all. Like I never looked at jiu-jitsu as a waste to make money. Of course I do make money from it. I don't teach seminars for free. I have bills, I have kids, and this is my life. But if I wanted to make money, I wouldn't be doing this shit. Like,
it wouldn't have been what you chose.
Listen, John, I'm 40 years old and I never went to bed to this day. And I just occurred to me the other day, and I'm very proud of this because I was never aware of it. It was just something that occurred to me recently. I never went to bed thinking about how much money I had in my bank account. It never even occurred to me. Like, it's like, I have to get sure I really want to have a private jet. I'm like, for what?
Right.
Show to flex to my friends. Like, what does that say about me? Like how I feel about myself? My pleasure, my reward has always been my own efforts and my life on the mats and the books that I love to read and my family, my children. I get way more pleasure. I know rich people now. I know plenty. Some of the most miserable people you ever meet, man. Like, so of course it would have been nice to you get $100,000 check in the mail every month. After that's great. But the only thing that does is it grants you freedom and comfort. The freedom I like. I think comfort is more to your own detriment. I think comfort does more harm than good, if you ask me. But the freedom it's nice. But I have that freedom. I'm not 9 to 5. I have the same freedom that a guy that makes $100,000 a year or a month. And I just don't have the comfort. Like in the sense where I can't drive. If I wanted to buy a Bugatti tomorrow, I couldn't.
Sure.
Someone that makes $100,000 a month can. I don't want a Bugatti. I don't need one. I drive an Escort already. So like kind of where I'm on position, like my life is, I don't resent it. I've been accused of that before, but I never resented people that have more than me because it's never been a criteria of success to me.
It's beautiful. I mean, I feel I share very similar tenets kind of with you in that regard, but that's beautiful. And I don't feel like you've ever come across as bitter or anything. This is just someone who is personally, and I'm invested in your success because I've been a fan for so long and I've seen this sport evolve in a good way too, in all good ways, in many good ways, not all, but many. And it's just one of those parallels we just see with time kind of develop, but that's great that you keep such a good perspective and you have so much other things to be proud of, your family, your previous accomplishments, what you're doing today too, that why dwell and wonder about your bank account? Like I love it. I love it. I want
irresponsible, just so you know, it borders on irresponsible. It's not always.
No, John, wait.
When I'm older, but it's okay. Life is good.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I'm with you. Let me ask this too, before we kind of wrap up, because if I read this correctly, this really blows my mind about you. And in so many ways, again, and this is one quick parallel, but I thought you're the perfect person to tell the story and be our self-elected historian in this sport because you are American and Brazilian. So I was like, he's the perfect guy for this. But is it true? Because I want to make sure this is true before I ask this next part. You started BJJ at 17?
16, 17, yeah.
Man, okay. So then here's the next question. How did, and I know maybe impossible to answer, but this is for all the white belts and blue belts out there. How in the world did you get so good so quickly? Because you were competing at a top tier in your 20s and then, subsequently ADC champ, multiple time world champ. But it wasn't easy to get information then. Was it your time in Brazil training? Your influences? Like, how did that happen?
I honestly, man, I think, and it was something, it wasn't an effort. It was something that it was natural and instinctive to me is how to set how do you order your, like, what determines what? Like, it trickles down, right? And I believe it starts with the heart. Your heart is the most important part. You have to want it. When I say, I mean, like, I will die here before I quit. I will not stop until I get what I want. There's no hesitation, right? And then there's the mind part after that. And it trickles them out. How do you perceive yourself? What is your self-esteem like? Your confidence like? How do you perceive fear, anxiety, and hardship? How do you see a challenge? What do? Do you turn back to the challenge, or do you head on towards it and enjoy that resistance? Like, you love the resistance from the challenge. And that's what I liked about jiu-jitsu. When I was trying to pass someone's guard, they didn't let me pass. They fought back. Right. It was that resistance that I liked. The fact that they were fighting back. It was because it was hard. And when I passed the guard of someone who was better than me, there was a reward there that you can't describe it. I go home and I feel like I'm on cloud 9. I'm like, holy shit, I can't believe I passed that guy.
Right.
I was so happy with myself.
Right.
And then, so that's the mind, that's second, right? That the gear in your mind to how you perceive the problems and the challenges you face. And after that, it's technique. I've always put technique last, which is probably why I was not the most technical guy in the world. But I think I was right, because I see a generation, and I'm like, when I say this, it's so hard to have this conversation because people see any kind of criticism as hate. I don't hate anyone. I love jiu-jitsu, but I see a generation that's so confused. And they're walking around, they all want to be champions, and they got their hearts in all the wrong places. Their energy is all in the wrong places. And I'm watching them like, man, you actually have potential. Why don't you do this? But they go, well, Rob, you're one person saying that. The internet is saying something else. Clearly, you must be wrong. The majority are saying X, Y, and Z. Why would I listen? So I have people, even like my own students, don't listen. They think, and I'm trying to tell them, dude, I know what I'm talking about. I've seen success.
Of course.
Like, I do know what the path is, and there's a common denominator there. And you guys are missing out on it because you're looking at the wrong place, in the wrong places. So they're looking at, if only I learn a new technique, or if only I become more famous, or if only I become friends with the right people. It's like they're more in the social, what I call the high school.
Yes.
Most of their energy goes into being popular in high school than it is at actually working on the things that I'm talking about. And because that energy is misplaced, a lot of times you don't really get anywhere. And that causes frustration. And I think that's what we're seeing now. I think this is one reason why, you see, like, I don't know this, but I'm just a wild guess, it's speculation. But if you look at suicide, teen suicide rates, it's through the roof.
It is, yes.
And I think there are kids that are not happy with themselves because they're looking for satisfaction in the wrong places. And this is affecting the jiu-jitsu world as well. In fact, it's shaping the culture. And this has been my research. Actually, I'm working on another book now, but after this book, I got another book that I have an outline for. And it's a cultural critique of, I'm tentatively calling it the rise and fall of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. There's no, I haven't started, but I have an outline in my head. I'm finishing the second book now. It's called The Inner Game of Fighting. Okay. And then I have this one I'm writing next. But I've observed the rise of Jiu-Jitsu. I know a little bit of its history, right? So, and then I've seen the rise from the late 90s, mid 90s to the point where, like, Joe Rogan won't shut up about it, right? That's its peak.
Correct, yeah.
Seeing signs of decline now. And I say that because, if I ask you a question, this is my overall thesis of the book. If I ask you, what holds Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu together? What are, for example, in religion, let's say you're a Catholic, right? What holds Catholics together? Their belief in the Vatican and the Pope, and that the Pope is God's representative on earth, and they abide by the Old and New Testament, and so on. They have a core belief system that for over 1,000 years, right?
Right.
If you go to, let's say you're a Democrat, right? What is it that holds Democrats together? They believe in equality, and they side with immigrants and blacks and women and minorities in general. And that, okay, so I have a core set of beliefs that they abide by. If I go, well, what about judo? What keeps judo together? I think judo's been around for 140 years. Well, judo has a core value. What's best? Judo is a means for education and improving on the human being. That right there is part. I call it a jita kohei. I can't remember now. My Japanese is awful, but it's basically I have Japanese really, but it's something that calls for unity of the group, right? Where you're not alone, right? I was in Hawaii, and they have a saying there. I'm not even going to try to say it in Hawaiian, but it goes, if you want to travel fast, you go alone. But if you want to go far, travel together. Yes. Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah, that's the sort of mindset that judo has. Like, they see judo as this giant organism. They are individuals within a much broader organism, right? And they have a purpose, that to grow judo as a means of bettering the human being, right? Doesn't mean it's perfect. It doesn't mean that they don't make mistakes, but they have something that keeps them cohesive. Now, if I asked you what keeps Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu together?
Yeah, I wish I had that one answer. I don't have it. I mean, it's like every different academy has its own sort of its own culture.
Yeah, right. So we are a series of individuals. We don't have a mega organism. There's no mega organism. That's why you see all these different federations. That's why you see the cultural clash between the kids who are just trying to sell tickets at any cost and make money. They're not thinking of jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu is a vehicle for themselves. They are the head. They are the purpose. Jiu-jitsu is a means for that purpose, which is their own fame and money and all that, which is a one way of looking at the world. I'm not so much saying that they are wrong per se, but
it's not a judgment. It's true. It exists. Yeah,
it is what it is, right? But like, it's not good for jiu-jitsu, because if we put jiu-jitsu or Brazilian jiu-jitsu in front of everything, right, and then we were just individuals pushing that mega organism forward, we would actually make it into be a bit bigger than judo. Because we have an amazing martial art in our hands. What we don't have is good culture. In fact, we have no culture. It's changed. So it changes every 5 years, and it's that lack of cohesion, I think, will be the end of jiu-jitsu. Yeah, it is it's interesting you said how it changes every 5 years. You really made a very astute observation there, because it's the trendiest thing ever, right? Trends. It's always trends. It's interesting. And someone with your probably historical perspective, I said this earlier, but what is old is new. You've probably seen a lot of it, not seen it all, but a lot of it before. So like you said, that like the Mikey lock, it's like some of these things aren't so new anymore. And or as innovative maybe as we think, if we had that one regimen or that one constitution we were turning to, we would all be more on the same page. Like, it does make sense. In some ways, I think when IBJJF, it's hard to say what they could have done different, right? Mm-hmm. I think had they stayed in Brazil a little bit longer, like 5-10 more years, and created that cohesion, that set of core values that we were going to live by, made it part of the curriculums. Mm-hmm. Because like they created systems and belt ranks, and they gave order to the sport in a professional and competitive way, but in a cultural way, there's a blank there. Avoid that Kodokan fulfilled. They did that in judo. In judo, they created a set of cultural rules, sets, cultural norms of behavior that are very entrenched in judo. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu doesn't have that. It's the Hakuna Matata culture. That's not cohesive. It's like every man don't have fun. That's how Brazilians live their lives. Like and then that's that. But I think that had they waited another 5-10 years and spent their energy creating that cohesiveness, that set of core values that we all abide by, I think that would have been better for jiu-jitsu in the long run. Maybe not the short term, but in the long run, that would have been better. But I think that it was too tempting to come to the United States when they came, because from a financial and growth perspective, it made a lot of sense. Right. And I hope I don't sound uncritical. No. When I say this, I think if jiu-jitsu is to survive as judo has over the next 50 years, for example, it's because of IBJJF. They're our only hope. So when I see people trying to shit on IBJJF, I'm like, I know you think you're being cool and modern and a rebel. Right. You're doing harm to the only people who are actually doing something to keep jiu-jitsu cohesive. You're actually shitting on the sport from which you make a living from. And that may benefit you in the short term, but it's going to hurt you in the long term, and it's going to hurt the sport even more in the long term. Yes. It's very selfish in a lot of ways, but it's the norm, because we're living in the age of me. Yeah. Look, I check myself too I've gotten much better about it in the last probably year, but I check myself sometimes. I say to myself, like, no one needs to know my opinion on this. Like, no one needs John Gibson's opinion right now. And then I won't share that, because sometimes, even though I may be impassioned in the moment and feel like it's important, the reality is I'm not going to change the world. So maybe just sit that one out, and then not fight that battle. Yeah. I live that conflict too, because I have opinions, and, it's easy to say an opinion that's popular, like I see people going on these, like the virtual signaling flexes online, and I'm like, I am going to side with the little girl that was raped. You're a horrible person. I'm like, I mean, you can, right? Of course, but like, it doesn't tell me anything about your morals, because it's an easy stance. Right. Everyone condemns pedophilia unless you are a pedophile. I mean, so it's just like, of course. And I'm not saying you shouldn't for the life of you. Some asshole out there is going to misunderstand. No, I know you mean. But it's like, I don't think much of virtual signaling, because it's an easy stance. Yeah. You can make it. But to criticize something that is wrong, but is not common, it's not a commonly held position, to me, that's where nobility of character lies. Absolutely. That's where you find integrity. Yeah. Like otherwise, like, okay, it's like saying 2 + 2 = 4. I'm like, okay, it doesn't say anything about your mathematical genius. Unless you can challenge something that's okay, this is not the norm, but it's also wrong. We should say something about it, right? And I live that conflict because I've done that, and it puts me like, and then I don't always do that. I bite my tongue more than I speak my mind. But when I do, it's one of those you get in trouble all the time. It's like you put it on a scale and you go, shit, do I really
exactly? Yes.
Or people coming after me, a day and age where this is like we live in like the witches of Salem kind of thing. Like it's, one bad review on your Google. I have like 150 positive 5-star reviews on my website. It takes one negative review of someone lying, like an accusation that is like, and you can get a fake account, go there on my website, lie, will not remove it, and that's it. It's the end of your life, And so it's like one of those things where you go, we're living at a time where, like, I think increasingly guys like me and you are just going to speak less and less. And and
it's unfortunate, right? Yeah.
And then the crazes take over because, if a bunch of people believe that the sky is green, and if you say the sky is blue and they get, no, it's green, and we're going to come after you if you battle us on this, I'm like, okay, the sky is green.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right, man. Whatever. It's green for you. Yeah.
And it becomes like, it's like they're questioning reality. People are questioning reality. And those who are speaking sense are coming across as bad people, evil. And it's like, it's a scary time to speak your mind.
Yeah. Well, you said it so well, man. And I hate to regurgitate your own words to you, but like, it's like weighing a scale sometimes. It's like, you just put it out there and you're going to get the heat, but it's like, no, this one's going to be worth it. Or maybe it'll change one person's mind, or they'll think differently. And that's enough for me. They just didn't consider this.
I'm at the point where, like, there's a part of me that goes, fuck it, Rob. Just live your life, make your money, enjoy your kids, and let the world burn. Like, but I feel like almost a social responsibility, especially as an ambassador to jiu-jitsu. Like, black is an ambassador. That's how I look at it. Like, I feel like, okay, if there's something that is harming the sport, I should say something. So now I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna stop, and like, I don't even care. It's getting to the point where I don't care anymore. Because if I'm the bad guy for speaking my mind, then you know what? You wait for another 20 years, you're going to see what's going to happen. I think I'm right. I think we are gearing the jiu-jitsu in a very, very negative direction because it's all about money and ticket sales.
Yeah.
Ticket sales are not a criteria of anything.
Right.
I don't know where people can decide. If you put Hasbullah, the Dagestani little, the Hasbullah.
Yeah, he's hilarious.
If you put him in a cage to fight Paris Hilton, you would get more pay-per-views sold than Conor.
Yeah.
That would sell. You know what I'm saying? If you put
it would sell out. Yes.
If Bieber fought Tom Cruise, it would sell more than. It's like ticket sales are not a good criteria for anything, but we're living in a day and age where money is the ultimate. That is the purpose of living. So if you make money, everything is a fight. And I like money, but I don't think that we should put individuals making money ahead of what is best for jiu-jitsu in the long run.
No.
And that's what we're doing.
Yeah. No. Yeah, I agree. And and it is tough I just feel so bad for so many of these IBJJF World Champions I shouldn't say feel bad, but my heart goes out to them in a way that have won 2, 3, 4, 5. And the zeitgeist, the regular folks out there have no idea who they are. And to me, that is a star. They've done something I will never accomplish. I will never come close to accomplishing, not on my best day. And it's like, to me, and I'm not naming names specifically, but I'm like, man, insert X, competitor here. That's awesome. They've done something no one will ever do, and it's a shame that they don't have that notoriety that they deserve. I mean, to me, they're an Olympian. Like, they are to me.
The part that bothers me, man, and like, and when I say this, a lot of times it comes across like I'm being petty because I'm thinking that I should be more acknowledged. I'm like, dude, I don't think I've done a tenth of what some people that I admire have done. There are people in Brazil that no one knows their names. They've trained 20 world champions. And it's kind of heartbreaking, man. It's heartbreaking because some of these guys are doing really important work down there with like underprivileged kids in the favelas, and they dedicate their lives to teach these kids, and they never make a dime, man. And just put in there, and it's not just a benefit to jiu-jitsu, but a social benefit as well. That's not factored in. And then to see and to see like them not being acknowledged, or like to see them struggle financially. I don't struggle financially, but some of you guys do. And then I see kids who just showed up on the scene 2 years ago, And, you know, not only are they making way more than they should, but they're also shitting on people who basically lay down the groundwork for them to be where they're at.
Yeah.
I think that's so insulting. Like, it's to jiu-jitsu, not forget like it's
no, sure.
insulting to jiu-jitsu. But no one seems to think so. Everyone applauds it. Like, it's like, okay, that's what we're supposed to be doing. And everyone's applauding it. Like, yeah, you go, you know. And I look at that and I'm going, man, there's no way this is sustainable.
Yeah. No, it's not. Well, it's so fragmented. I mean, I can't wait for your next book and to hear about more around the culture around it and maybe some of your solutions around that or proposed solutions, because, you know, it's a world I love to live in. And for sure, I want all my kids, whether they compete or not is one thing. I want them all to participate in BJJ just for the self-defense and the camaraderie, all those great tenets of it. But yeah, if there was a systemic culture that was trained or embedded around, we all would stand to profit for sure, right?
I think that this is the way I look at it. Is jiu-jitsu good for you? Yeah. Do you love it? Yeah. Do you want your friends and kids to have that same joy and get from it the same things that you got? And the answer is always yes. Okay. Would you like your grandchildren to enjoy that as well? Yes. How about your great-grandchildren? Yes. So why are you doing what's best for you right now and not thinking about what's best for the sport, right? And I think that's what we should. And I don't think there's a solution for this. I think at this point it might be too late, because ultimately it's a cultural problem that is well beyond jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu is just witnessing the side effects. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about, right?
Sure.
And I wrote about this briefly in opening close guard. When I was coming up as a blue belt, purple belt in Brazil, if you won a tournament, that was great. If a journalist came over and interviewed you and asked you to put your photo on the local newspaper, that was great. But if you got your picture and you walked to the newspaper or you approached a reporter to try to get your picture on a magazine, that was the most embarrassing. People would make fun of you. They would it was so against the social contract for you to do. It was incredible. Like, whoa. Self-promotion was an embarrassment to you. It was an embarrassment to your friends and an embarrassment to your gym, right? So for my generation, I grew up with, that's how my generation thinks. They call them marketeers, and it was an insult, right? It's an insult.
Man, now if you don't walk into the practice and go like this and tag your gym, you're not training that day.
And the worst part is we've normalized fake, right? We've normalized. Authenticity is antisocial. It is strange. It is weird. Whereas phony is everyone's phony. Everyone knows that everyone's phony. Everyone agrees that everyone knows that. And everyone's pretending like nothing is wrong. There's nothing wrong.
Right. My man, you're so right. God, right. Like we just accept it. And
then I have to, you're getting old. I'm like, maybe I am, but I'm not.
Maybe, that's it. Me too then, dude. Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's true though. I mean, I think though, as you mature though, you see things more clearly. I just think you see them for what they are. You know, and then in your own life's experience, you determine whether that's for you or not, you know, but the older I get, at least, the more I hope to think I see things more clearly for what they really are, you know, and maybe that's part of life. I don't know. But.
It is, man. It's just like, you know, like this is what I'm trying to work on myself, is just accept the things that are not in my power. I'll make an effort, but I'm not willing to, you know, go out of the way to pick fights with people. Like I'm not, man. Like I'll write my books and then it's out there and that's my part. People can read it or not, you know, and then maybe I'll be wrong in the future. Maybe I'll be right. But like, that's how I feel that jiu-jitsu suffers from right now is its priorities are all backwards.
Mm-hmm. I understand a lot of what you said. I do. And you know, you're plugged in, you've been around for a long time, but you're also a great professor and you have great, very successful students, and then just non-competitive students too, that just are probably hobbyists as well, I'm sure, you know? So I feel like you have probably a pretty clear like finger on the pulse, I imagine, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think I've seen jiu-jitsu from every perspective there is to see it. I've seen it from the Brazilian perspective, from the American. I've seen it as a student here and in Brazil, from a coach here and Brazil. Mm-hmm. I've seen it from the gi and no gi perspective. I've seen it from the perspective. I've organized shows. I've worked as a historian for jiu-jitsu, so like I've seen jiu-jitsu from multiple angles, right?
Well, and fighter and fighter coach, and I mean, you've worked with the who's who, and you yourself were an undefeated fighter too, and that's another thing about your game. People, I don't know necessarily if they consider or not, but you were so competitive, gi no gi, and you were like one of these Americans that had Brazilian respect when like no one had it, like no one had it. So I mean, and that set a level to the propensity of your game. You were so good, you earned that, and then when you went no gi and started, you won ADCC, and then started going MMA, and like I mean, man, you. If nothing else, I hope this discussion today you leave feeling good about yourself, man. You've accomplished everything you set out to do. I mean, it's pretty remarkable, and I feel like your perspective is important. You've seen it all. You've participated. It's different. Like some people will talk about maybe Danaher, and they'll go, those who can do, those who can't teach. And I'm like, well, that sounds like that's a little harsh for him. But anyway, I get it. But that doesn't apply to you because you've done it and you did it successfully and you can teach it, which kind of makes you a little of a unicorn.
No, honestly, man, like I don't think in those terms, but I do think about, like I said, I enjoy resistance. I never enjoyed training with people that didn't resist me. I never, like my favorite training partners were the ones that beat me, believe it or not. It sounds masochistic. Like,
it's how you got iron sharpens iron, right? Like that. It's got to be how you got so good.
About poking the black belt, man, can we trade? Like I was that guy as a kid. Like I always went for the best guy in the gym. That's the guy I wanted to train with.
Wow.
So it's like I enjoy challenges, So there's a part of me that I could have, competed more in the gi or more in no gi. But once I do what I want to do, I feel like, okay, I've seen that. I've seen what it looks like. I've climbed that mountain. I want to go on to the next one. Like I like that. That's personality. I enjoy that for myself.
Yeah. No, I get it. You accomplished a lot. And another thing, so young too. Like so young. Even your MMA career, like you achieved a lot before like probably 35 than most people do, like in 60 years. Seriously.
My MMA career is the one thing I wish I had been more like I've done, because I dedicated 10 years of my life to MMA exclusively. Like 27, almost 10 years. Just what? Yeah, I think 2000, more or less like 2008 to 2018, 19. I was like pretty much 100% immersed in MMA, and I wish I had fought more. Like more, like people like say, "Oh, you were retired undefeated." I'm almost like don't like to hear that.
But you were like 8-0, right? I mean, it was enough fights.
Yeah, but like I never fought a top 10 guy, so I don't really count that as like Khabib retired undefeated. Okay, that's godlike stuff.
Okay, I hear you.
On a UFC belt, right? Like
I got you.
Drysdale here. Like I had one fight in the UFC. I got cut for a fatal drug test, and I didn't really fight. I fought good guys. Every guy I fought had a good record. I never fought a guy with a bad record. They all were like 6-1, 12-2. Like they all had good kind of records, right? I fought guys that were undefeated as well, so like I had that, but I really wish I had fought more. And the reason I didn't fight more was one of it was fear of losing, and I'll never forgive myself for that. I was scared. I was never scared of getting hit. I didn't mind getting hurt. I didn't mind getting hit. I didn't mind getting tired. It was the punishment I inflicted on myself in case I lost. Yeah, that I couldn't handle. That was one. The other one was I cannot do one thing at a time. It's a personality flaw, character flaw. Like I got to be doing 20 things at the same time. And for you to be successful in the UFC, at the UFC level, you have to be ultra focused. And I'm like teaching seminars, running a school, trying to run an affiliation, having a family, and like doing a lot of this pretty much on my own, and fighting MMA and coaching MMA, because I was fighting and coaching at the same time. Remember?
Yeah. You were coaching like Frank Mir. You were coaching top 10 people like while fighting. It was crazy. Yeah,
I was doing that at the same time while I was fighting. So I'd corner a guy, and like 2 weeks later I'd be fighting. Right. So that right there are some, like I hate using the word regret, but they're like things that I would have maybe done slightly different, see where I would have ended up. But at the same time, I'm really happy with where I'm at. So I don't regret.
It takes a man to stand in there and compete. It just to show up and compete. And I've never fought. I wrestled, I did BJ, but I never fought. So let me be very clear there. But respect to fighters, because it's the only proposition in life where you're going to walk in there and 100% you're going to walk out diminished, less than you came in. And then it's just a matter of like, let's find out in the next 20 years what that effect is going to be. Could be minor, could be a bruise, gone in 2 days, could be something with you forever, you know? And that's a crazy proposition, you know? I give such respect. And then you walking in there with your credentials, it had to have been difficult to find fights. It couldn't have been easy to find fights at all for you, I can't imagine. So for those 12 or 8 people that stepped up and all with their records, you know, I mean, I commend them as well. You know, it couldn't have been an easy career.
It wasn't easy, man. Like, honestly, fighting, it was never, ever easy. Like, I never, until my last fight, I was shitting my pants in the locker.
Yeah, of course, though. I mean, why intelligently, why wouldn't you be? Yeah.
No, I was like shitting my pants every single time. It never went away. I learned how to manage it better, but it never really went away. But I wish, honestly, I think that if I had a coach that really guided me mentally and emotionally through the process, I would have done a lot better. But the truth is, I had coaches that held pads for me. I had coaches that cut weight with me, and they were phenomenal coaches. But very few times in my life did I have someone giving me emotional support. And I think one of the most underplayed aspects of fighting is fighters are extremely emotional.
Yes.
When we say emotional, we think of a 12-year-old little girl crying. And these men are supposed to be the epitome of what an alpha male is. So you're not supposed to be emotional, right? I'm like, fighting is as emotional as those guys are emotionally needy, like more than your, you know, your ex-girlfriend who wouldn't like stop blowing up your phone after you were like, they're incredibly needy, but they won't acknowledge it. No one will admit, they won't ask. You know, they'll never.
It's the elk in the room, but it's true. So, they're terrified. Yeah.
It's a father figure. They need a father.
Yeah.
And I think I missed that as a coach. I had it during some stages of my career. I had that, but for the most part, I was by myself. I think that right there hurt. Now looking back, I go, man, that was. I mean, sometimes I was training myself. I was literally like running my own camp, like by myself. I mean, some of it was like looking back, it's like, man, that's so unprofessional. I wish I'd done that different.
Yeah. But you, man. Again, in respect to your opponents, I understand your parallel to Khabib, but you did retire undefeated. So, you know, be very proud of each one of those significant journeys, man. You accomplished your goal at hand. And it's, again, it's an experience that now you walk, and it makes you unique. You know, not everybody, very few people are ever going to be an ADCC champ. They're going to be a world champ, going to win 8 MMA fights, like, and then be able to articulate all that in a way that, like, most normal people can just understand, man. You being a good professor to me is like, that's important as being a world champ. You know, very few people can give the gift of jiu-jitsu clearly, you know, and that's a gift in and of itself to be able to teach it and stuff. But to have been such a good competitor too, it's kind of an anomaly. So you're the man, Robert. You're the man.
I don't feel that way, but thank you.
For sure. I know we're coming up on time. One last thing kind of before I let you go. Sure. If people do want to reach out, kind of questions, inquiries to get the book or sign up for seminars, all that good stuff, where should they look to reach you?
You can. I'm pretty active on Instagram. I'm trying to stop. I think I told a friend the other day, the only reason I'm still on Instagram is because I'm still single. I swear. Yeah, you get a girlfriend or married, I'm off that thing, man. Like,
man. It's a double-edged sword.
You have to be on the radar if you want to, you know, like meet. But like, it's the only way to meet people is online these days.
Yes.
But other than that, man, like I actually hate social media. But I am pretty active on Instagram, so you can message me there at Robert Drysdale JJ at Robert Drysdale JJ. My gym is in Las Vegas. We actually have 2 locations in Vegas called Drysdale Fight for Us and Zenith by Robert Drysdale. Zenith by Robert Drysdale is where I normally teach. And then, just reach out to me on social media, or you can just call the gym, and I'm available for seminars, privates. Getting busier, man. It's crazy. Like, I was always a concern that as I got older, I was going to have less and less work and seminars. What am I going to do when I'm older, you know? And I'm starting to get less and less worried because the older I get, the more work comes my way. And I don't know if it's because jiu-jitsu is still growing, or I get a lot of, maybe people like my seminars, they always bring me back, whatever. But it's been good, man. I can't complain. Life is really good. Like the world has been very good to me, man. So
Good.
I complain all the time, but I
but I have a moment of objectiveness. I shouldn't
complain.
Yeah. No, I'm happy to hear it for you, man. You've sacrificed a lot of your life. And even though it feels like it's a kind of in the pursuit of your own goals, because it was, right? But you empower a lot of other people along the way, man. And you inspire a lot of other people along the way. I will never forget watching you beat Marcelo Garcia, man. That shit carried me 12 years. Like, I was like, no, Robert Drysdale's the best. No. Like, man, that forever changes the trajectory of somebody, you know, and the way they interpret things in the future and stuff. So you've done that to many people, I'm sure, you know, and I have friends who are students of yours. A good friend of mine, Dylan, he's been on this show as well, talks about you so fondly as an instructor. So keep fighting the good fight, keep giving all the good gifts. Again, thank you again so much for finding the time for this show. And I'll be sure to include all the links so people can get a hold of you. Thank you so much again, Robert.
Thank you, man. It was a pleasure. And yeah, send me the link. I'll post it. And thank you for the opportunity. And yeah, hopefully if you're ever in Vegas, stop by the gym. More than welcome.
I will. 100% I will. Absolutely. Thank you again. Take care, Robert.